Hey guys, it's Adam for the Animals, and today's topic is speciesism. What is it? Now, speciesism, like racism or sexism, is a form of discrimination, but unlike racism and sexism, it is based solely on species membership. It involves treating members of one species as morally superior or more important than a member of another species, even when their interests are equal. It's how we make arbitrary distinctions between members of different species to justify treating them differently. Now, an example of this is how we keep and love dogs and cats, but eat cows, pigs, and chickens. Let's compare the differences between dogs and pigs. One, man's best friend, the other, man's favorite dish. What grants us moral liberty to love dogs but eat pigs? How are they different? If we compare the intelligence levels of either animal, after a quick Google search, the results are unanimous. Pigs are just as smart, if not smarter than dogs. I have read that they have the emotional intelligence of a 3-year-old human. So we can't use comparative intelligence as a basis for justification. And the list after that runs pretty thin. How about aesthetics? Are dogs cuter than pigs? After a quick Google search again, the results prove this to be false. So, what is the real difference? Any rational mind will have to come to the conclusion that the distinctions we draw between pigs and dogs are completely arbitrary, and it makes no more or less sense to eat one or the other. Now, in other parts of the world, it is just as common to eat a dog. Now, for many of us, we feel a pang of disgust and rage at the thought of that. But if we investigate this feeling of moral superiority, we find that it is nothing more than cultural conditioning. Any person who eats pigs could just as easily eat dogs because there is no difference in terms of intrinsic value between the two species. But sometime long ago, it was decided that we would domesticate dogs and eat pigs. What gives us the power to decide what species belongs where in our society? Is it because we are stronger than they are? Is it because we are more intelligent? And I suppose these are honest answers. We are stronger, we are more intelligent. But does might make right? Just because we can do something, does that mean we should? Now, if I were to hit a puppy, could I argue to any of you that it was my strength and intelligence that gave me the right to do it? If I were to, bear with me, beat up a child, could I argue that it was because I was superior to him or her in every way that I had the right to exert my will over them? Of course I couldn't. Not only would I be deemed a monster by everybody that knew me, but I would also be in jail. But you might think now, Adam, other species in the wild use their strength and intelligence to hunt other species and kill them. And this is true. But what is their reasoning for doing so? Clearly we can see that they must hunt because they must eat. If they don't eat, they will die. Necessity grants justification. Beyond our strength and our intelligence, what other ways might we differ from animals? Now, to me, this is one of the defining qualities that makes us human. We are moral agents. We get to decide what's right and wrong. We get to use our logic and our reasoning, our emotion and our instinct, and determine what we think is morally just and unjust. Now, we all know the golden rule. It's simple. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. This basically means that we shouldn't go around hurting others because we ourselves wouldn't want to be hurt. Now, I consider this a perfect rule, one that satisfies my moral compass. I wholeheartedly agree that we shouldn't hurt others, and to do so is wrong. Now, another framework of justice is that similar interests deserve similar treatment. So, do we have similar interests to the animals that we eat? Now, we know for certain that we do, because our biological makeup and biological instincts are almost entirely identical. We need to eat, we need to drink, we need to sleep, we care for our families, we care for ourselves, and we want to be free, we want to live a life free of oppression, and we actively avoid pain and suffering. Very important. We actively avoid pain and suffering. So we've established that we have moral agency, that hurting others is wrong, and that our interests and the interests of animals are almost entirely identical. And yet every year we kill between 55 and 75 billion land animals every single year. We torture them, we enslave them, we put them through hell so that we can eat them and we can wear them. And we do not have to. What's going on here? We as a society are very slowly waking up to the idea that we all participate in the most blatant form of hypocrisy every time we eat a meal. We determine certain animals as worthy of our love, and other animals whose only worth goes so far as what their bodies can provide to us after they're dead. Animals of similar intelligence, animals that have sentience, animals that live an objective reality much like our own, animals that think, speak to each other, have an interest in living, and most importantly, animals that have the capacity to feel pain and to suffer. Now you might say, Adam, these animals don't have the capacity to understand what's happening to them, so for that reason it can't be so bad, right? And to that I say, I think of the times when I would have nightmares, or I'd be very afraid as a child, and I think the reason I was most afraid then is because I didn't understand what was happening. In the absence of something tangible, something understood, my mind would conjure up all these horrible possibilities and I would be left stunned and terrified. Think about what these animals must be thinking and feeling their entire lives spent imprisoned and tortured, and considering that they have no understanding of why they're there and what is going to happen to them. Think of the gut-wrenching terror present in their lives, terror that cannot be understood or spoken about, least of all to their captors. If hell exists, it's right here on Earth. We built it, and we subject some of the most vulnerable, innocent species on the planet to it every single day. And we do not have to. What is right about this? Everybody's suffering matters. Do you agree with me, or do you only go so far as the animals that we've determined are worthy of our consideration? Here's our main hang-up: commodification. We treat certain animals as commodities rather than individuals. We brand them as something rather than someone. As if something is an apt description for any dog or cat you've ever known. Those bundles of spunk and joy and personality. How could we ever refer to dogs or cats as things? Now, in the same fashion, how could we ever refer to a pig or a chicken or a cow as a thing? We call them things to lighten our moral load. After all, if we pretend that they aren't beings, suddenly we feel justified in doing whatever we want to them. Now, this is a dangerous line of thinking, isn't it? Do you remember the last major time in history that a group of people determined another group of people as things rather than beings? Now, we can begin to see how speciesism as a form of discrimination is almost completely identical to racism, sexism, and homophobia. Now, what's the major difference? Now, we in the modern world are actively fighting and winning all of these battles. We've made it no longer tolerable to treat someone different from you as less than you. You will no longer be accepted in society for discriminating anyone on the basis of race, religion, sex, or sexual preference. We are closing in on becoming a society where all humans are treated as the equals that they are. And good for us. Clearly, this is the correct course of action. But do we stop there? Is it just humans that deserve equal treatment? It is the responsibility of every member of a civilized society to actively root out injustice, wherever that might be. Society has a responsibility to always be growing and evolving. So what's the holdup on animal rights and freedoms? What is preventing so many of us from drawing the conclusions that we already have inside of our minds? Tradition? Now, has tradition ever been a basis for considering anything morally just? If humanity had gone through history too stubborn to change because of tradition, do you think we would have gotten anywhere? So many of us know the injustice present in society, and yet we refuse to act. Just because something is widely accepted by society doesn't make it right. There was a time when it was right to discriminate based on race. We squashed that. There was a time when we hated on gay people and trans people and women, and we squashed that too. So now let's squash the most blatant wrongdoing of today, and let's give the animals the freedoms and rights they deserve. And that starts by acknowledging their suffering. That starts by acknowledging their right to freedom. And that starts with us making the choice not to contribute to their suffering because we do not have to. One day in the future, we will look back on the way we treat animals with the exact same shame and the exact same disgust that we now do the Holocaust. That is a fact. Remove yourself from our greatest hypocrisy. Claim your moral agency by seeing the wrong and righting it within yourself. Go vegan. And for those of you that stuck around for the entire duration of this fiery exchange on this very passionate subject, I thank you very much, and I hope I've given you something to consider. This has been Adam for the Animals. See you later.